And in the dark, not a great time to look at a home, right? If it's a brand new home and you're not worried about the outside, or you can look at the outside the weekend after you make an offer, that's fine. But just be aware as a buyer that you may have to shift your schedule. Hello, and welcome to Real Estate for Real People. I'm Brad Whitaker. This is
his better half.
Well, by far.
Or the other half, Marianne Whitaker.
And we are Whitaker Home Team, and we are part of Realty One Group Pacifica here in Southwest Washington. So today, because we're in Washington, and it turned fall, last Saturday? Mm-hmm. Saturday morning early. And as we were just
3 days ago.
Yeah, as we were talking, it's like it went from summer to fall right on cue. We went from using our AC to wearing our boots and turning on the fireplace. So anyway, so we thought it would be appropriate to talk about the fall and winter pros and cons to buying and selling a home. So because there are definite things you do and don't want to do, things you need to look out for when you're buying and selling in the winter. There are some myths that we're going to bust because those are always fun. So we'll just go from there. So let's start with pros of buying in winter.
Okay. Pros for buying.
So potentially lower prices?
Yes. It doesn't mean that the values of the homes have gone down. It just means that you probably have more motivated sellers. So they may be more reasonable in pricing their homes in the winter time, especially coming out of the last couple of years of crazy home prices and such. So we often see not a huge drop, but a softening of the market a bit, as we'll say, as far as pricing is concerned. So for buyers that may not have been full bore looking, now may be a good time to do that.
So does that make sellers more willing to negotiate, do you think?
Possibly. It just, every situation with every buyer and seller is different. So it just kind of depends on what the headspace is of both parties. And, you still have those strong-willed sellers that think we're back in the 2020, 2021 market. And, so it just depends on the situation, I think.
Agreed. Okay, so do we have fewer buyers or more buyers looking?
Actually, generally speaking, we have fewer buyers. I mean, here in the Pacific Northwest, in the fall and winter time, unless you have a rare, gorgeous, sunny day, you kind of have to be ready to slog around in the rain and the muck. And so there are not as many people willing to do that in the fall and winter as there are in the, say, summer and late spring, just because it's not as easy, right? I mean, especially if you're doing this with kids, you're in and out of the car, you've got wet stuff on because it's oftentimes raining in the Pacific Northwest. And so you have to be, if you're a buyer in this kind of season, usually you're a person that needs to move. We've seen that.
So need versus want?
Correct.
What's the difference?
So a need would be job transfer. A need would be changes in the family. So you either need to downsize or upsize. You're having a baby, need to upsize, those kinds of things. Those are more of a need, I see it. A want is more of, gosh, I'm kind of tired of our house. I don't really want to do any remodeling. Let's buy a house that's already upgraded and go after it that way. So need versus want.
And so are you saying that one of those two groups is more determined than the other?
Oh, I say a need is always more determined than a want.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
I have to move in this
Right.
month because my job starts, my kids start school, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Okay. My landlord has decided to sell their home, and I need to get out of my rental. I might as well buy.
Right.
That's
Oh, yeah.
That's a need.
Sure.
Yeah. Got to find a new place to live.
Okay. So how about what can we learn when we're looking at homes or land in the fall and winter when it's raining or when it's snowing? What can we learn about the property physically?
So when buyers are looking in the fall and the winter, I think there are a couple of upsides and a couple of downsides to that. The upside is you really see what the property's like when it's nasty. You see where the low spots are in the yard. You see the
Because
gutters.
they're filling with water?
Yeah. You see the gutters that may be overflowing because they haven't been taken care of well. You see maybe even leaks inside because of roofs that need to be replaced. You may see water in the basement if the basement isn't sealed, if you have a basement. So, those kinds of things tend to present themselves much more readily in our season of fall and winter because of the rain. It's a little invasive. It can be, anyway.
True.
The pros,
Oh, yeah.
I would say, is for the buyer, again, you get to see what the property is really like. So, I mean, that kind of works both ways, right? Yeah, so.
So could be bad for the seller if their home has issues that they either may not know about or may not want exposed. Because, the reality of it is when you've got a basement here in the Northwest, unless you've done a lot of work to the outside, very often it's going to get water in there. We've actually sold a home to someone, and in the middle of the winter when we were there to look at it, to purchase it, there was literally I guess you would call it a rivulet, running in the basement.
A small river.
Yeah, you could see water flow with current running towards the sump pump, and you walked in the late summer and you wondered, oh wow, they've got pallets all over the floor. I wonder why. And then you go back a month or so later after a heavy rain, and there's 2 inches of water in the entire basement.
That's why.
Yeah, and the sump pump is kicking on every 35 seconds, right? So something that can be just as simple as that. Now, that required a considerable foundation drainage system that had to go in, but it went in. So, so there's people that can do all kinds of stuff to fix all kinds of things. So speaking of those people, are they usually easier to get or harder to get, like inspectors or contractors in the fall and the winter?
So what we've found is that oftentimes those contractors are actually easier to get in the fall and the winter because everybody doesn't have their home improvement projects going like in the summer.
And they could be a little more affordable? Because now
I have not seen their prices change.
Oh.
I'm going to be honest.
Okay.
I think those prices are pretty static. But timeline wise, you can usually get them there sooner than later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Home inspector, same thing? Easier to
Yeah.
get them because they're not so busy.
Well, because there are not as many, generally speaking, transactions in the works in the area in the fall and the winter time.
So in the fall and the winter, are we going to get more attention from real estate agents, do you think?
As far as
fewer
homes
showings?
or what?
Well, so if there are fewer homes on the market to show, and there are fewer buyers out there, are we necessarily going to get more activity or less?
I think it depends on the house and it depends on how it's priced.
Well, yes, very true. Yeah.
But, I mean...
So it's not necessarily like we're going to get run over with
No.
clients, and it's not necessarily that we're going to be, a ghost town, but really your point
It
is...
moderates.
Yeah,
It moderates in the fall and the
it
winter.
does. Yeah. Okay. So what about tax advantages at the end of the year?
Oh, I'll let you answer that.
Okay.
You're the money guy.
So for the people who need to... So if your accountant calls you and says, hey, you're going to pay taxes heavy, or you need to go buy a property to start putting some losses to, it could be a great time of year, like on a 1031 exchange, or if you're buying for a company. The end of the year is a perfect time to spend some money on some real estate. So, we've had many of our agents, their accountant will call them and say, do you need a new car? You should probably go buy one. So we know that if it happens in real estate, it's got to be happening in other places. So it's just one of those things that makes it probably a good idea to at least consider investing in real estate when you get down to the end of the year. So in the winter, in the summer, the thing that typically gets tested is the AC,
Oh, yeah.
right? If the house has it. All homes have heat, right? Not all homes have AC.
True.
So in the winter, it's a good opportunity to see how the house runs as far as hot spots, cold spots. It can also stress a heating system,
Oh, that's true.
right?
That hasn't been on for months.
That hasn't been on for months in a certain way, right? So there's all kinds of heating systems. There's baseboard, there's zonal wall units, there's a big furnace, there's mini splits, there's all these things. So, and some things don't work well, like the older heat pumps, they don't work past 0 degrees, right? I mean, if there's no heat in the
32?
atmosphere, what's that?
32.
Oh, 32, right. So that
His
was
Canadian-
my Canadian coming
His
out in me.
Canadian background is coming out right
So
there.
you get below 32 degrees, and some of the older heat pumps don't work because they can't pull heat out of the atmosphere. Now, some of the newer mini splits, they work to like 16 degrees. So if you're just below 0, they can still efficiently pull heat out of the atmosphere and heat the home. But not so much with the older stuff. So, yeah, so you got to watch out for that.
Yep.
Older furnaces, I don't know that we have that many oil furnaces around.
We shouldn't anymore.
Yeah, but you never know, right? So that's the other thing I guess you got to watch out for is if you're buying a home and you see an oil furnace, typically heating oil skyrockets in the wintertime because all of a sudden everybody's using it. And so there's massive demand and not always a ton of that stuff laying around. So the price goes up and away we go. So now it's costing you lots of money to heat your home. So
Didn't we find out the same, similar with propane? That it was much cheaper in the summertime if we were to fill our tank in the
yes,
summertime?
you'd always want to fill your tank in the summer with
Yeah,
propane.
same idea.
Yeah. Natural gas, when it's in the city lines, not so much typically. But again, I think when you get to that spot where it's the winter and everybody's using their heat.
Demand, high demand.
Yeah, very true. Okay.
Supply and demand, did
Yes,
they say?
always. So, what can we tell about the neighborhood? Or can we tell anything about the neighborhood when it's wet and stormy and snowy? Can we see if it's flooding anywhere? Can we see that kind of stuff?
Like, I'm thinking aesthetics of a neighborhood. I'm thinking probably not going to be seeing much of that. Although, if it's close to Christmas time or holidays, you do get to see which neighborhoods are kind of festive, and that's kind of fun.
That's true.
In our neck of the woods, we have one particular house that has so many blow-ups around Christmas time. Oh my goodness. Anyway, I digress. But
I think we drove by that house the other day. I think he's got like 18 inflatable football players in his front yard.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, again, if that irritates you, probably not the neighborhood for you. If it excites you, maybe something to consider. So, yes, it can show, areas of flooding in the neighborhood. I'm thinking one particular spot just north of here. In Kelso. So we are around a lot of rivers, and the water table, especially in the wintertime, is pretty high. And there are some low spots on the other side of dikes. And so you just kind of, it would be a good time to check those kinds of things out because they will be readily apparent.
I think about one of our agents up in Centralia. She lives up on a hill and there's a road in front of her house, and there's this huge field across from her. It just goes for what looks like miles. There are certain times of the year where she has lakefront property because a whole field floods. So
is it close to a river?
Yes, close to the Chehalis River. So, you have to be aware as to what's going on, not just in the yard, but around the yard, right? You want to look and see, is your house below another house directly behind you or beside you? Is the water going to end up in your yard? Does the neighbors, do the neighbors, I always found this amusing. The neighbors drain their gutters off their
Towards
driveway
your-
or towards your house.
Towards a certain property, yeah.
And that's always fun, right? So you have to be aware, and you need to ask your home inspector, how is this going to impact me, right? What if the gutters are just draining beside the house? That wreaks havoc on the foundation. So you want to make sure that it runs at least 3 or 4 feet from the house so that it doesn't supersaturate the land and that kind of
So
stuff.
that's a hint for those of you who are selling in the wintertime. Make sure that your house is kind of weatherproofed. If you've got have a lot of rain coming off the roof, make sure the gutters are cleaned out. Make sure that the flow is away from the house. They have special things for that to get it away from the house. So yeah.
Splash blocks,
and
all kinds
piping
of
and
piping
all
and
sorts
stuff
of
that
stuff.
takes it away.
Yep.
So the last thing that we'll talk about here on for the buyers is what about multiple offer situations? Are we going to run into a lot of those in the fall and the winter?
in my experience, no, not so much. We're not seeing that a whole lot right now anyway in this market.
Right.
In this market, but we see it even less in the wintertime. It's it's just slower. It's just a slower kind of go. So from an agement perspective, this is the time that you're gonna get the opportunity to see how well you have built your database and your sphere of influence. And this is a time of year that you probably work harder than usual to get transactions in the pipe and all the way to close. Would be my experience.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I will say that I think it's important for the consumer, the buyer and the seller, to understand that listing your home, for the sellers listing your home in the fall and the winter, there's advantages to that. The buyers that are out looking in the horrible weather are far more determined.
They're serious.
And they
about it.
realize that they don't have the ability to be quite so picky if they need to move, and there's only so many homes on the market. They've only got so much to choose from, right? So I mean, if you're considering listing your home, don't necessarily, if it's listed, don't necessarily pull it off just because Thanksgiving and Christmas is coming around. Oftentimes the most serious buyers are moving then. I mean, who wants to move at Thanksgiving? Who wants to move at Christmas time? But if they have to move then, they're gonna buy. So don't necessarily take your home off the market because you think it's gonna slow down. All you're doing is making it, all the other properties that are available, more important to.
Buyers.
Yeah, exactly. So don't take your home off the market if you can help it during the fall and the winter.
That would be our advice anyway.
Yeah, and I get it. There's Thanksgiving and nobody wants to traipse them through your house at Thanksgiving dinner. You can typically, your MLS will allow you to black out days that you're not allowed to,
Sure.
nobody's allowed to show the house. So,
The other side to that, sellers, is that if you've decorated your home for holidays, that stages it really well. So use that to your advantage.
agreed. Okay, so the cons of buying in the winter, we've kind of morphed back and forth on this, but especially here, we've got a lot of trees. So you've got leaves, you've got dead vegetation, you've got all these things.
Pine needles, fir needles.
Right? Leaves from all the deciduous trees. So there's a downside there. If you've got a really mature landscape garden and property, it can look kind of bleak in the fall.
Okay, babe. Everything around here looks bleak in the fall. I'm just saying. It's gray. It's wet. It's
True. Yeah, it's just
not
what it is.
bright. No bright sunny flowers like in the tropical spaces that we had grown to know and love,
Right, like Arizona.
or Hawaii.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So, and I guess it's important to differentiate. This is really a northern half of the country problem,
Yes.
right? So here in the Northwest, we get a lot of rain. You get in the Midwest or the East, and it's
You get
snow,
snow.
right? You get around the Great Lakes, and now your home is buried. So how do you do a roof inspection if it's covered in snow?
I don't know. I'm glad I don't do real estate in the Midwest or the Great Lakes area. We'll
So-
leave somebody else to do a podcast on that.
We've seen houses that have a lot of snow on the roof, and it can do a couple things. Number one, it can do damage just due to the weight. It can rip gutters off, can do all kinds of things. There are certain parts in our part of the world where, because it snows so much, they don't even put gutters on the house, because when the snow slides off, it rips them off.
Yep.
So, but they do have longer eaves to keep the water out away from the foundation. So, whereas here we don't, sometimes our eaves are right against the sidewall, so it makes it a problem.
And also, I mean, just in all fairness, we do have both of those types of weather in our state. It's just that we're in the western half of the state. And so the eastern half of the state, on the other side of the big Cascade Mountain range, that they get more snow than we
A little
do.
more high desert snow up
yeah,
there.
high desert snow,
4 seasons, as they say.
as they say.
Okay. So, you've moved out of your home, and you've got, and all of a sudden you get a cold snap. Should you keep some heat on? Do you keep water running? I mean, what are the
So you're
kind of the best
talking-
practices?
You are talking about you now have a vacant
A
property.
vacant property, yes.
Okay. I think just like with any home, whether you're living in it or not, there are some maintenance pieces that you need to attend to. One of those being, if it's a cold snap, you need to make sure that your pipes are wrapped and that they don't have the opportunity to freeze. But another piece to that is keep just a little bit of the water going so that there's still a flow, especially if it's really cold. That will help avoid that pipe freeze. Again, another thing is keep the heat on to somewhat of a minimum. It's good for the system. And then you can open, let's say, the cupboard doors underneath the sink. So again, those pipes get some warmer air. It keeps them from freezing. You'll want to make sure that on the outside, the hose bibs, you've got, those funky little styrofoam things you can buy from one of the local hardware stores to help the pipes. So just taking care of it like you would even if you lived there, but with a conscious thought about you're not there. So what are the things that help maintain those systems when you are there, and figure out ways to address that in your absence?
Yeah. And from a buyer's standpoint, from a buyer agent standpoint and a buyer standpoint, it is miserable walking into a house that is 40 degrees. I mean, when you can walk into a house and see your breath, it is not a great showing experience.
No.
So,
It's not a good marketing tool
No.
to leave all the utilities off.
yeah. So, sellers, please, if your house is vacant and you moved out, you need to plan for some kind of a utility bill, because keeping the house at 50 degrees is really not a good plan, right? It's the bare minimum. And if you don't care about the home and you don't care about the quality
Selling it
of how it
quickly.
shows, then by all means, keep the power down low. But, 60 is kind of a minimum that you
I
want to
agree.
keep a home at. You don't want to have to walk in the home, because when you have the interior of the home that cold, it actually starts to do damage to the interior of the home. So you got to be careful about, you're wanting to save a couple $100, but you may cause thousands of dollars of damage if a pipe breaks or, who knows what could happen. So yeah, just allow for some utility bill money to cover a warmer home, because everybody likes walking into something that's a little bit warm and cozy, So we don't really do a deal. So just like in the summer, we get our week of 100-degree weather. We might get a week of a cold snap where there's ice or snow or something like that. But that's not the case everywhere, right? So in some places there's really slippery, treacherous roads to deal with. And what kind of liability might a seller have if there's ice and snow on their property?
So most homeowners will carry homeowners insurance. So if anything catastrophic happens on the property to an individual, that should alleviate some of that. Real estate agents we have insurance that covers the firms, and most of our agents, all of our agents in our office are part of the, what do you call it? Not E&O, but L&I. So they pay into labor and industries
Workers' comp.
Plan, and so for the agents, they're taken care of. But it is something to think about. If you are selling your home and you have icy sidewalks, you may want to get some of that rock salt and put it out there and show you've done your due diligence in taking care of whoever is coming to your home. And if it's really bad outside, people stay home. I mean, seriously, if the roads are icy and they're treacherous and it's not safe to be out and about as much as you want to go look at a home, chances are nobody else is going to be out looking at homes either. So save it for a better day in our area, anyway.
Or get out the propane blowtorch.
Well, yeah. I mean, there are obviously areas of the country where that's not really an option. You just make do because that's what your winters are. That is not true in our area, and some people really don't know how to drive well in the ice and snow. So
This is true.
I'm just saying.
Yep. Okay. So let's talk about some of the things that would be pros or good when selling in the wintertime. So we've got less competition because other sellers have made the mistake and taken their homes off the market. So that's good. We've got more serious buyers.
No, not so many tire kickers. I should say.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. The tire kickers are there for the DIY projects and the ideas and that kind of stuff in the summer when it's easy to go see a home. So potential for quicker sale for motivated buyers.
Okay.
You get a chance to showcase that heating system.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah.
It's a positive showcase.
Yeah. And I would say fewer people touring does mean fewer disruptions during the holiday season.
Sure.
Right? So when you've only got a smaller handful of people, and I guess this is the other thing. So we'll often do a Matterport 3D scan of the home, and that gives.
So for people that don't know what a Matterport is, it is a special camera that takes scans of a home, and they can be stitched together so you can have a virtual walkthrough. So
Right.
you can physically, with your eyes, walk from place to place to place and see how all the rooms are stitched together.
Right, so it's a virtual 3D walkthrough. Often, the thing that we hear the most if we go show a home, the people often say, well, the pictures make this house look so much bigger, or this isn't what this house looks like at all in the pictures. So we have some very talented photographers in real estate, and they make doors and appliances and rooms look huge. But with the Matterport 3D scan, you kind of get what you get. I mean, it allows you to walk through the home, every hallway, every opening, every doorway.
See the finishes,
Yeah.
look at the status of the floors, what kind of shape are they in.
And in the wintertime, that's a great way for people all over the country to be able to look at your home.
Yep.
So if you're going to spend any money as a listing agent, some type of a 3D scan is going to be critical, right?
Agreed.
And I think the NAR, our National Association of Realtors, they say that 30% of today's buyers are looking for the floor plan with measurements that comes with that 3D scan. This specific camera is very accurate when it scans. I think like to 1/8 of an inch or something like that. So, I mean, it can really give you the size and dimensions of your room. So when that buyer comes along and they're trying to figure out, will my bedroom set fit here? Does grandma's dining room table that I've been carting around for 3 generations, or 2, or whatever, is grandma's dining room table going to fit? Is my china hutch going to fit? Those kinds of questions get answered without people having to traipse through your house just to put a measuring stick on it, right? So sometimes technology can help us with all of that. And speaking of technology, just real quick, there's a lot of Ring doorbells and cameras in the homes right now.
I know what you're gonna say.
And so you need to be careful. This is kind of a sidebar here, but be careful when you are looking at homes, because in our specific state of Washington, it's against the law to record audio on video. So you have to be
in a home or anywhere.
Anywhere.
Okay.
Right. So you have to be aware that there are homeowners who have cameras and, something as simple as the Ring doorbell, but sometimes they've got cameras on the inside for security, and they are recording everything you say and or do. So if you're trash talking somebody's house, or you love the house and you're trying to figure out all the things you can do to make sure that you can buy this, the seller may be listening to everything you're doing. So you are either giving away all of your secrets or
all your strategies.
Yeah, all your strategies to make an offer. So just be very careful about what you say and where you say it. My recommendation, and the way we teach all of our agents, do not have a conversation, even out in the driveway is a bad place. It used to be fine. You'd walk out the front door, you'd have your conversation. That Ring doorbell will pick you up 20, 30 feet away. So maybe everybody hops in their car, you get on speakerphone, you have a conversation as you're driving to your next house, right? That's going to be the important piece. Mm-hmm. So just be aware. You can blow a deal, or you can make a seller very irate to the point where they may not even accept your offer if you did want to bring one because of something you've said. You go into the house and you say, wow, these people are pigs because of X or Y, or who'd ever leave this many dishes in the sink, right? So you gotta be careful, okay?
So I will tag on that a little bit. Sellers, make sure that you disclose. It is a requirement by law that you disclose if you have listening devices in your home. So as a listing agent, make sure you go over that with your sellers.
Yeah, and we've seen kind of some really weird things come from this. Let's tell one quick story. So agent to the south of us, he's showing the home, and the folks love it. And he's not thinking clearly. He says, I'll meet you guys at the office, and we'll write this offer up. He goes back into the house. He's turning off all the lights. He cracks open the fridge, grabs a bottle of wine, uncorks it, takes a swig, puts the cork back in, and puts it back in the fridge. All on video. So by the time, and on top of that, the seller had just gone to the neighbor's house while the showing was happening, and she was literally watching what was going on her phone in real time as it was happening. And so she took that video snip, forwarded it to his boss at the firm, and said, this is what just happened at the end of the showing. So by the time he gets back, his sellers, to the office, his buyers are sitting there now working with another agent to write that offer, and he gets hauled into the office and he's terminated. Just like that. So you got to be careful, right? You can't
just do the right thing all the time, and you don't have to worry about it.
Just don't be dumb, right? Okay, so some of the cons of selling in the winter, and then we'll wrap this thing up. Fewer daylight hours, right? I mean, it's dark when we get up and often dark when we get home. So, you're looking at homes in the middle of the day or on the weekend. So, I mean, there's no more light.
Or in the dark.
Or in the dark. And in the dark, not a great time to look at a home, right? If it's a brand new home and you're not worried about the outside, or you can look at the outside the weekend after you make an offer, that's fine. But just be aware as a buyer that you may have to shift your schedule to make sure that you can actually go see this house, right? It's kind of important. So outside of that, holiday schedules can be disruptive.
Yeah, we've talked about that
right?
a little bit. Yeah.
And then you've got some buyers or sellers that may not want to make a decision in the middle of the holiday season. So maybe the seller doesn't want to move between Thanksgiving and Christmas. They've got their whole house decorated. They're like, yeah, I'm not moving anywhere. So there are issues that you're going to bump into as a buyer and as a seller during the holidays. So let's all be aware of that. I mean, to think that people stop buying homes just because the holidays are happening is absolute folly. In my first year of business, I wrote an offer up on Christmas Eve day. And that's the thing that kind of turned my head around to realize that just because it's Christmas time doesn't stop people. People don't care, right? There are some people who don't celebrate Christmas, so it's just another day to them. And that is, they need to buy homes too. So be aware, be available. And if you're an agent, for the love of all that's holy, don't take the month off. Please, we have seen agents take Thanksgiving to New Year's off. And
What does that do to Q1?
Q1 is gone. There's no transaction
Nothing in the
happening for
pipeline.
them January, February, or March. So please don't make that mistake if you're an agent. But at the same time, don't hide if you're a buyer or you're a seller, because there's lots of agents out there who do want to work for you, do want to help you, and they can be very successful this time of year. So, anyways, anything else that you want to talk about before we wrap this thing up?
No, this is one of my favorite times of the year, actually, between falling leaves and pumpkin spice and all things nice. I love fall.
So I'm just going to say one thing before we go. If you're showing your home thinking of pumpkin spice, it may not be a bad idea to put some smell goods on the stove or around the home, because people really buy with emotion, and that smell triggers things for most people. So make sure that your home smells folly, not like rotting leaves folly,
No.
but pumpkin spice folly.
Or,
Right.
or wet dog that has been out in the yard.
Oh yeah,
No,
yeah.
but nice smells, like cooking smells.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay. Well, thanks very much for watching. I hope you've got some information that can help you. If you have more questions, feel free to subscribe.
Comment, like, share. I'll see you next time.
See you.